with thanksgiving. Let your requests be made known to God. Matthew 7:7. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be open to you. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we enter your gates with thanksgiving and into your courts with praise. We thank you for our leaders whom you have caused to be elected to serve your people in their various capacities in this place. We are to pray for those who have the rule over us. First, I bring before you our Prime Minister, Honorable Dr. Minnis, whom you have chosen, upon whose shoulders rest the ultimate burden of our nation. Father, I thank you that Dr. Minnis knows what it is to cast all his cares and the cares of our nation upon you, for you cared for him and for our nation. Thank you, Father, for giving Dr. Minnis more grace when the burdens grow greater, and more strength when the labors increase. We verily believe that you are pleased with his decision to reach out with kindness to our neighboring nation, Dominica, suffering terribly from the ravages of Hurricanes Irma and Marie. In so doing, we believe Dr. Minnis has placed our nation in your increased favor. For whatever is given to the poor, lend it to the Lord, and you will surely repay the Bahamas back beyond our wildest expectation. Your word says in Luke 6:38, give, and it shall be given unto you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over shall men give unto your bosom. We bring before you all of our ministers, but two in particular this morning. Minister Brent Simonet, responsible for immigration. May your Holy Spirit guide him and his department. Give them the wisdom in opening our borders to those in need. Jesus said, I was a stranger, and you took me in. Naked, and you clothed me. Hungry, and you fed me. Finally this morning, I lift up Minister Marvin Dames, responsible for national security, which include the police department, under heavy pressure to solve unsolved murders, especially the murders of Eugene Woodside, 8 years old, and an 8-month-old baby shot to death. These and other heinous crimes are saying to us that our land is sick and is in need of healing. Father, bring to remembrance of your people the ancient time-honored promise. If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, and will forgive their sin, and will heal their land. We, this company of thy people assembled, would begin now to meet the conditions that will enable thee to fulfill thy promise. May every Bahamian in the sound of my voice begin now to repent of our individual sins and the sins of this nation, and come to understand that right living alone exalted a nation. Now, Father, be exalted and get glory for yourself in this place. In Jesus' name, praying now together the prayer you taught your disciples to pray, saying, Our Father, art in heaven, be thy name, thy kingdom come. Be done on. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses. Trespass against us. Lead us not in temptation. Deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Honorable members, when the business of the House suspended on yesterday evening, the member from Marco City had reserved the floor. The chair now recognizes the honorable member for Marco City.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Let me first begin by saying a special thanks to the residents of Marco City who've given me this opportunity to be their voice in this place. But more importantly, have given me an opportunity to work with them in partnership on a daily basis to seek to improve the condition of residents in Marco City and also contribute to the broader effort of empowering Bahamians in Grand Bahama and throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, since the general election, the team that I have the privilege of being a part of in Grand Bahama in general, but certainly the team in Marco City, has been working diligently to address the various issues that affect residents. Since the election, we have taken the time to honor the promise that we would have regular meetings, that our office would remain open, and that we would seek to address the concerns of residents, not as their salvation, but working in partnership with them. We've held town meetings addressing a wide range of issues, including hurricane preparation. We've continued our program of hurricane relief. We have held meetings to empower contractors, where we have been assisting them systematically in making sure that they are compliant, that they have their business license up to date, their VAT TIN number, and they have the capacity to receive contracts both in the public as well as private sector. And a number of these contractors have been working steadily, whether it's with respect to hurricane relief, school repairs, Grand Bahama Sporting Complex, as well as other private contracts that we've become aware of and have sought to empower them. And in this respect, we are encouraging the many skilled men and women to organize themselves in companies, build alliances with existing companies, so that they are able to take advantage of the opportunities as they continue to emerge. We've also, since the general election, continued to provide concrete information so that persons can be empowered. Tonight, for example, Mr. Speaker, members of the Department of Social Services, continuing on our regular education series, will meet with residents in Marco City at Central Church of God this evening at 7 p.m. to address the wide range of concerns relative to social services. We will also be providing information on how relief can come to those senior citizens, persons with disabilities, as it relates to their power bills, water bills. Each of the agencies that impact our residents, we have systematically been putting those decision makers in front of residents to explain the various programs they have and to give residents an opportunity to make recommendations on how those services can be improved. We have also, Mr. Speaker, began our business plan development courses. We made a commitment during the election that we will produce a wide range of businesses in Marco City. 2 of those programs have commenced. We are in the midst of various business modules that will help persons learn how to organize and successfully run their businesses. And at the end of the 6-week sessions, we will be providing various empowering gifts to those business plan, those persons who have developed successful business plans. We have an independent panel that will adjudicate those business plans that are developed, and persons will be provided, one, with $5,000 towards their business. Two, we will be assisting them with rental space for an 8-month period. Three, we are providing them with a mentor that will oversee the further development of their business. We have a second initiative that is going on where there are 3 entrepreneurs who are in the process of formulating an internet cafe and a resource center that will have both a for-profit component and a non-profit component. We have entered into discussions with one of the telecommunication companies who will provide free Wi-Fi services. We're negotiating full hardline installation for those businesses. And the telecommunication company is in agreement that all 5 of the constituencies in Grand Bahama will benefit from a similar arrangement. The goal here is, again, to establish another business, and we fully expect that that business will be up and running prior to the end of November. So, Mr. Speaker, we have been busy focusing in on those commitments we have made to residents. We have had an active educational program assisting in very quiet ways, sometimes not so quiet, persons who need assistance with their children who were going back to school, not merely the back to school program where we assisted over 800 students with backpacks and other supplies, but on occasion through the Marco City Scholarship Fund, we have assisted parents who were in dire straits with some help towards tuition. We know that it is unsustainable to continue in the manner that we have been in terms of offering assistance, but we have run into so many heart-wrenching situations that we've been obliged to assist. And of course, we've continued the tradition of various members of Parliament in Marco City who each of them in their separate ways, regardless of what party they have come from, have made some invaluable contributions. We've sought to continue the programs they've started in terms of Father's Day and Mother's Day, showing appreciation to the fathers and mothers of Marco City. Mr. Speaker, having said that, we are still burdened in our constituency because so many families are still seeking to close their roof from the elements and the ravages of the recent hurricanes and now the most recent tornado. And so we have been working first with the Office of the Prime Minister and now with the Ministry of Work to assist many more of those residents. But I wish to say that the Marco City Hurricane Relief Program will step up another notch. Even though we've been extremely active, I believe we have the most comprehensive data on residents who require help in the country outside of NEMA. And we've helped hundreds of families throughout Grand Bahama. But even now we recognize the pain of so many residents. And so we fully intend to step up our hurricane relief program. And so tonight, some of the residents who have concerns with respect to hurricane relief, we look forward to seeing you out at the meeting at 7 p.m. this evening. Mr. Speaker, my final point with respect to Marco City, there are a number of families who are still plagued with having moved from one apartment to another 2-3 times during the course of 1 year. And there are a number of families who have been adversely affected in terms of their jobs, the companies for which they've worked being laid off. And as a result, a number of them are challenged, Mr. Speaker, in terms of maintaining their mortgage payments. So we've been actively engaged with the personnel from various commercial banks, as well as assisting them with attorney consultation so that they are able to take legal action where they believe they are unfairly treated by any commercial institution. Some of them, Mr. Speaker, have matters that are also outstanding with the Mortgage Corporation, and while we have encouraged them to honor their commitments where we believe they have been unfairly treated, we have been seeking to intervene to assist them. And so I would encourage all of the residents of Marco City to keep the faith, to be encouraged. We will continue to work with you in partnership to address the various issues that affect you and your family. We are constantly working to find ways of reducing the pain that you have been experiencing for a number of years. And while we do not position ourselves as your salvation, we are your partners, and we will honor the commitment we've made to you. Mr. Speaker, with respect to the Ministry of Youth, Sports, and Culture, I'd like to just briefly outline some of the initiatives that we have embarked on since the general election. Mr. Speaker, in this regard, I wish to extend gratitude to the Governor General, Dame Marguerite Pinling, for presenting a compelling agenda of this administration. Like colleagues here, Mr. Speaker, I share the view that our Governor General is a unifying figure in this country and has shown tremendous grace, notwithstanding a change in administration, in discharging her job in the most dignified way. And for that, I'd like to say a special thanks to her. In the speech from the throne, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister signaled a number of very important initiatives as it relates to the ministry that I have the honor of leading on behalf of this administration, and for that I extend gratitude to the Prime Minister and to all of my colleagues who have been extremely supportive of the programs. Let me begin first, Mr. Speaker, by referencing commitments made in the speech from the throne. One such commitment is to introduce initiatives that would empower young people. Mr. Speaker, there are few things that could empower young people more than job opportunities. And so I'm very much pleased that not only in words in the speech from the throne, but indeed this administration is committed to youth enterprise development. I will not preempt the minister with responsibility for finance, but I would say that the self-starter, the Jumpstart programs that started by design by our predecessor, Shivago Lang, when he was in government, I thought that he and his colleagues crafted a wonderful program that would empower Bahamians through teaching them how to build business plans and how to successfully implement and manage their businesses. We all know the success stories that have come out of that initiative, inclusive of Bahamas Striping, Imagine Graphic, and others. I'm happy that this administration has made the determination to continue this program and to capitalize it in such a way that we can produce dozens of businesses over the course of the next year. Mr. Speaker, over 5 years, I believe you will see an incredible impact through the Self-Starter and Jumpstart program. I'm happy to also indicate that collaborative efforts are going on between various ministries. This administration recognized that there are a number of very important programs that affect youth development that unfortunately are scattered throughout the public service. This is not a cost-effective way for a government to function. And the Prime Minister has given a mandate that we streamline the various programs that are scattered throughout the government system. This, Mr. Speaker and colleagues, indicate that this is a responsive administration, despite the fact that we've only been in 4 months. I recall when I first spoke in this place, one of the issues I raised is having been in the system as a consultant on more than one occasion, I was always disturbed by the fact that there was a duplication of services throughout the public sector. Persons were busy building their legacy projects as opposed to making sure that they collaborate in a way that it's effective. Sometimes administrations would cannibalize a program that was started by their predecessor, even though the program was a good program. And so I'm happy that we are not following that pattern. And so, Mr. Speaker, the youth enterprise initiatives that scattered throughout the system they are now being pulled together under one umbrella and in a collaborative way so that we are able to do youth enterprise initiatives on a consistent basis. So in the month of October, for example, Mr. Speaker, you would see a range of youth initiatives that involve preparing young people for business, providing them with capital in order for them to jumpstart or grow the businesses that they presently have. So October through December will be a wonderful time for young people to put forth their best ideas so that they are able to benefit from these youth enterprise initiatives. There are several ministries that have in their budget resources to accomplish this. Ministry of Finance, the Office of the Prime Minister, the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture are the three principal ministries. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, apprenticeship is an important part of developing the next generation of skilled Bahamians, educated Bahamians who have the capacity to replace a number of foreigners who have come in for a short period of time to carry out very specific technical services. The apprenticeship program, the most comprehensive component of it, is resident in Ministry of Labor. The Minister of Labor is now collaborating with each minister, inclusive of the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture, so that all of the apprenticeship components that are scattered throughout the service, that they are amalgamated and we are able to launch a coherent program. And where there is variation in the apprenticeship program, persons would know which is the beginner's apprenticeship component, and when they are through with that, if they are minded to continue, they would know which ministry to transition in order to continue with apprenticeship. That is the second component that we believe will empower young people. The first, youth enterprise initiative, providing training, business plan development, financing. The second is the apprenticeship initiative. The third component that we have embarked on, and during the month of November, you will see in various communities throughout the Bahamas a youth business expo. There are many youth-controlled and ran business enterprises that members of the public are not aware of, that we intend through trade fairs to make available to the public so that they are able to be beneficiaries of the services and products these young people produce, and they are also able to help empower these businesses. So in my view, Mr. Speaker, I think that the public will begin to see a ministry that is more outreach focused. The target audience that we are interested in going after are unlikely to continue to go to hotels or go to the ministry building to participate in the programs we have. The real fight in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas is on the front line in the streets. It's in the communities where our young people are not leaving, but are staying, and in some cases, in small groups, are negotiating life and death issues without the influence of the rest of us. So it's important that we take the programs to them. And so the Youth Division has been given a mandate to work closely with the Sports and Culture Division and take our initiatives directly into the community, using the parks, organizing street events with all the requisite permits so that we're able to speak directly to parents, speak directly to young people, recruit young people. We have a youth directory with over 300 youth organizations. Yet, there are thousands of Bahamian parents who are unaware that these organizations exist and can play a role in helping them to mentor and groom their young people. And so we intend to be an outreach-focused ministry. Mr. Speaker, in addition to youth enterprise initiatives, apprenticeship, the Business Expo, we are going to use technology in order to share the positive messages, the list of programs that we have available, the funding opportunities that exist throughout the system, to share that with young people throughout the country. Most young people are spending their time on their cell phone, much like the adults. And so it's important that we are able to communicate with them through social media. And so the ministry is now actively creating content and finding a way to package that content in order to share that content with persons who are throughout the length and breadth of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. We have had a series of consultation meetings in Grand Bahama since the election. We've had 2 consultations with all the youth practitioners, cultural practitioners, as well as sporting practitioners. We have begun those meetings as well in New Providence, and we will be in Abaco, Eleuthera, and Bimini during the month of October. We will complete the complete review of the Family Island programs with visits by the end of December. Mr. Speaker, one of the things we did in each of those consultations is we have made available attorneys, and we'd like to say a special thanks to Mr. Darian Crary, who worked very closely with us in ensuring that our youth, cultural, and sporting organizations all become compliant for at least 2 reasons. 1, so that they're able to access government funding and grants, and 2, so that they're able to access private and international grants. One of the things we have done recently is plugged into, in a way that we believe it hasn't been done in recent years, the international funding network. The government does not have enough resources, Mr. Speaker, to fund all of the initiatives in culture, sports, and youth development. However, the government has quite a few partners in the international community that are minded to work with our organizations when they are not minded to make funds available to government. So in other words, if you have a non-governmental organization that's dealing with reintegrating young offenders in society, there are multiple agencies in the international community that can provide grants and assistance for you to set up that organization and facilitate your programming. There are youth organizations that are interested in deepening democracy by facilitating debates or monitoring the effectiveness of their member of parliament or the central government. There are grants available for deepening of democracy initiatives. And a part of our role in the Ministry of Youth, Sports, and Culture is to link Bahamians, particularly young Bahamians, members of the cultural community, with all of these funding opportunities that exist regionally and globally. Toward that end, we have been providing that information, forming a bridge so that Bahamians can increasingly access the tens of millions of dollars that are available on the international level. Mr. Speaker, shifting for a moment from the youth division to sports, this administration has the benefit of having in cabinet and as member of parliament a number of persons who have worked in the sporting community for decades. In the cabinet, we have at least 3 former ministers with responsibility for sports who have built deep relationships internationally and who have been extremely helpful in making sure that we are wise in how we construct programs, how we negotiate agreements that have been put in place by the former administration, so that we are able, moving forward, to make sure that any international event that we host in the Bahamas, that we are not merely footing the bill for it, but we are finding a way to convert these international events into income-generating events for the jurisdiction, or create an opportunity so that we can get positive PR from it. I would like to indicate and especially thank the Minister of Tourism for his wise counsel, but more so, Mr. Speaker, for being completely open to the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture working in tandem with the Ministry of Tourism. We've had an odd situation in the past, Mr. Speaker, in the country where sports development and cultural development has been driven through tourism. tourism should never be leading the charge in terms of cultural development. They can take the content developed by culture, which ought to be developed for us, and they can help market that to the international community, but they should never be at the forefront of developing the cultural content. Minister D'Aguilar has been a complete partner in terms of us gradually working to create one portal so that when international sporting federations or persons from the cultural community are interested in doing business in the Bahamas, when they come to the Bahamas, they are speaking to tourism and youth sports and culture as partners. And you don't have what you have had previously as outright competition between two ministries, because it does not benefit any or the country in the long run. Mr. Speaker, I would like at this time to congratulate the Bahamian athletes, not just those who have achieved medals at the international meet, but those Bahamians who continue to make sacrifices and to be excellent ambassadors in the Bahamas. I would only signal, though I would not give details until my colleagues sanction that it could be given, we do intend to enlist several Bahamians who have reach internationally to assist us in entering into discussions and negotiations with international funding agencies and federations to strengthen our sports product. So in the course of the next few weeks, we are going to revisit the Sports Ambassador Program and have an opportunity to enlist some members of the private sector who has tremendous reach in terms of attracting resources to the Bahamas, negotiating the best agreement for when we host future sporting events. In terms of culture, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has clearly indicated that he intends to invest substantially in the area of culture. And we, in the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture, have taken the Prime Minister seriously, and we have benefited from his guidance in terms of those areas that he is particularly focused on. And so over the course of the next few weeks, in fact, in October, we fully expect a number of major announcements to be made that will have an impact on employment generation through culture. I would only say this much. One, it is important that Bahamians protect the intellectual property of this country. Two, that we preserve our heritage. And the only way we're able to do that is if, one, we are practicing it on a regular basis, we are internationalizing the things that we do, whether it's the festivals we create, whether it's the food, fashion that we prepare or design, whether it's the music that our musicians produce, or it's the performances that we put on stage. But secondly, an overlooked area is using the legal means of preserving phrases, names, copywriting inventions by Bahamians. And so we are presently working on an exciting project with UNESCO to ensure that we protect our heritage, we preserve it, we protect it, and we further develop it. Toward this end, we are presently in discussions with lecturers as well as persons within our community who have technical expertise in ensuring that we study and document carefully what is ours, and then we reserve it through legal means. We believe that this will open an entire area for intellectuals in the Bahamas, cultural practitioners, in order for them to earn revenue and for the practitioners to earn residual income when their creations are used internationally. So we believe that in culture, Mr. Speaker, that we are going to be able to create a tremendous amount of job opportunities. In the month of November, we will be issuing a number of cultural grants that are a little different than the ones we are presently issuing, and to a point raised yesterday by those opposite. The ministry has already been engaged in the process of providing youth grants, sporting grants, as well as cultural grants. What we must do is to share with the public the various business enterprises that are being sustained through these grants. But more importantly, we intend to share in the month of November an exciting program where we are going to jumpstart a number of businesses that will strengthen the cultural offerings in Grand Bahama. Grand Bahama, Mr. Speaker, has a tourism product that has the potential to be beefed up to the extent that we are able to provide a wide range of cultural offerings. The Ministry with responsibility for culture intend to work with various federations. Recently, we have just formed in Grand Bahama, as a result of the consultation, what is the equivalent of a federation of performing artists. We intend to subvent them, given the fact that they have a number of business initiatives that we believe will transform the cultural offering in Grand Bahama. The Member of Parliament for Central Grand Bahama has designed what to me is one of the most exciting cultural packages for Central Grand Bahama that the ministry is completely supporting and will assist those entrepreneurs in jump-starting each of those businesses on the waterfront, creating a promenade, creating cultural spots that cruise passengers can visit, but more importantly, Bahamians overseas and locally can also visit and partake of. West End and East Grand Bahama will follow suit, and as we speak, those members of Parliament are looking at various ways in which they are able to design a transformation of the seafront in those communities. Mr. Speaker, culture will not only focus on Grand Bahama, but in Nassau in the month of November, you will see, and again, without preempting any other announcement, you will see a number of exciting initiatives that support the Prime Minister's vision, the Minister of Social Development vision of transforming the inner cities. We believe that culture has the potential to not only build character, solidify national identity, but also to provide employment and income generation. So we will be working very closely with various stakeholders in the community in order to ensure that Baintown, Adelaide, the whole Grantstown community, Fox Hill, that we work very closely in all of these historic communities to create cultural spaces that will change the physical look of the community, will solidify the identity of residents and Bahamians, will reduce the amount of young people who have extra time for non-productive activities because they would be engaged in these exciting cultural offerings. We believe, Mr. Speaker, that these areas that we've talked about for years will have some tangible spaces that we can mark as a part of the Prime Minister's inner city revitalization program. Mr. Speaker, I find it interesting that some folks who are part of an organization that has benefited from support from these inner city communities continue to absolve themselves of the responsibility they had to change the look of those areas. And it is easy 4 months into an administration to dismiss concrete things that are being worked on. So I'm willing to go on the line, Mr. Speaker, and make the point that this administration is firmly committed to revitalizing the inner city community, and that there is a clear plan of action that over the course of the midterm budget debate will be laid out to show in very specific ways how we are able to change the look of Over the Hill, from the removal of roadside garages to the exploration of changing some streets that are phenomenally narrow, to changing derelict buildings to removing of derelict vehicles, to making sure that the cultural practitioners in the inner city can benefit from tourist traffic because of the exciting things they plan to do, to make sure that businesses that are functioning in these areas take responsibility for spaces surrounding their businesses so that they can further expand the beauty of their business to the neighboring areas, so that gradually the faith-based organization would not only have their edifices looking extremely attractive and functional, but that they would make sure everything surrounding them are attractive and functional. That not only will the physical environment be affected, but the human condition, which is why we are seeking to partner with various social partners, cultural and civic organizations, so that we can all join in what is a common fight to transform the communities that many of us came from, even though we have moved elsewhere. And so, Mr. Speaker, I believe, notwithstanding the pain that Bahamians are experiencing, the frustration that they're experiencing, the role of leadership is not to pander to the frustration. The role of leadership is not to simply echo what is being said by the man or the woman on the street. The role of leadership is to come up with a concrete plan in order to release that frustration, to channel that energy in very productive ways. And I'm satisfied, Mr. Speaker, that the team that I'm working with, this team that is in here today, those that serve in cabinet, those that serve as members of parliament, that we have the required talent, but more importantly, that we have the right disposition to make a difference in people's lives. And so Mr. Speaker, let me wrap up by simply saying a few words to members of the public. We clearly understand the frustration, the pain that many residents are facing. In my constituency, there are persons, Mr. Speaker, who have moved 3 times in the last 12 months. Cannot afford the rent. They're not working. There are young people who go to great pains to avoid asking you for anything, because the truth is all they want is a job. Mr. Speaker, there are folks who have worked for 40 years to build a home or purchase a home, and they are now behind in their mortgage payments with very few places to turn in order to save their homes. I merely mention these to make the point that I understand that level of frustration and pain. I understand the mortgage issue, having in the past gotten demand letters myself. I understand the persons who have had to move often, coming from a family that have lived through more than 15 corners while I was growing up. I understand the frustration of young men having come home from school with 2 college degrees, could not find a job, and catching the jitney to see my girlfriend or take her on a jitney. I understand the frustrations. And so, Mr. Speaker, having said that, I want to assure members of the public that we are working tirelessly on your behalf. When we took a break for the summer, it was a break from Parliament. It was not a break from the work of the country. That we met on a regular basis, working on various initiatives submitted by domestic investors as well as international investors, so that we could help create opportunity. What is lost sometimes, Mr. Speaker, on many persons is that the confidence in the Bahamian economy as a jurisdiction had been hurt by the way in which we did business in the past. And so sitting down with investors today, domestic or international, it's important that they understand we are not looking for anything other than partnerships to create ownership and employment opportunities for Bahamians. There's nothing in it for any of us individually. That is almost, Mr. Speaker, and I don't want to overstate anything, that is almost a prerequisite that you have to put on the table before you enter into discussion with a jaded international community that sees the Bahamas in a particular way. Our people have to make a decision. We have to decide as a people that we are also going to have some skin in the game. 39 members of parliament will never have all of the solutions for 450,000 or 500,000 people. So we have to work in partnership, which is why during our hurricane relief program, when we did an assessment and somebody needed 30 sheets of plywood, 10 rolls of felt, whatever they needed, we said, listen, we can assist, but we cannot solve all of your problems. Constructing somebody's house, reconstructing somebody's house is not the responsibility of government. But the government has to also have some skin in the game, because our role is, one, to create the environment so that people who are minded to work hard and smart can thrive, but we also provide a safety net so that when people, despite their best efforts, are not succeeding, we are there to assist them. And so I'm asking members of the public, continue to work in partnership. Make sure that you are putting yourself in a position where you are the main architect in your own development. That does not absolve governments of its responsibility, but it make sure that you are the chief agent in your own salvation. And every member of parliament will then be asked to step up to the plate and fulfill the commitments they have made to you. So my first message to all my brothers and sisters is that make sure that you have some skin in the game, that you see yourself as the chief architect in your own salvation. The second recommendation is that we have to get involved. Get involved means that when meetings are called, when office hours are held, that you are front and center and present. You have to show up at the meetings and weigh in and share the ways in which we have to refashion this country. That if you have a concern about how a particular department is being run or the way a minister is discharging his or her responsibility, then you ought to attend the town meetings. You ought to visit the office so that you are able not merely to vent, but you are able to help reshape what is going on. I believe that every minister, every parliamentary secretary, every member of parliament in this place, on our side and the other side, would listen to your concrete recommendations if they believe that there is a partnership that is being forged. Thirdly, I'd say to the young men and young women out there who are frustrated, you are the agents of change in this country. We are relying on you to join us with your enthusiasm, with your idealism, with the energy that some members had maybe 10 years ago. You can play a pivotal role in reshaping what is going on. Right now, in several constituencies, inclusive of Marco City, members of parliament are organizing festivals. Those festivals are substantially being organized by young Bahamians under 30. Those festivals give young people an opportunity to shape an economic space for their community and promote it so that international guests as well as Bahamians can come into communities where they have never come before to experience these festivals. Yesterday, the member from Pinewood talked about what they are creating in Pinewood. I know that Central Grand Bahama is doing the same thing. In Marco City, the same thing is happening. In Baintown, the same thing is being planned. Young people are agents of change. And we believe that over the course of the next year, what we are going to see in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas is an explosion of festivals in communities that have never had them before, where fashion designers, chefs, persons who produce music will be putting on display their various creations in the community, promoting it first nationally and then internationally, So we will have hundreds and then thousands of Bahamians and international guests going into Pinewood, going into Baintown, going into Central Grand Bahama, going into Marco City, going into West End, going into Pine Ridge, in order to partake of festivals and the creations of persons from those areas. This is an economic bonanza that is on its way. We are asking you to get ready and to participate. The fourth thing I would say to young people is prepare for opportunities that are on the horizon. In Grand Bahama, in Abaco, those development projects that are being discussed presently, when they come, the only way they are really, really meaningful is if Bahamians are preparing in advance to take advantage of those opportunities. You would recall that a part of the challenge that existed in Bimini, that Biminites raised, was that when you are bringing a major development to an island, your first order of business ought to be consultation with local residents about what opportunities are being created so that they are able to position themselves to benefit from it rather than see persons from overseas coming in and enjoying the benefits because they have not been properly prepared. So this administration is committed to making sure that in every community where there is a major development about to emerge, that Bahamians are consulted. The Subdivisions Act, in fact, called for consultation, mandates it. And so before this government gives the impression through a heads of agreement that an investor has a free ride, Bahamians must be consulted to know how their lives are going to be altered, adjusted, based on what is being proposed. And so I'm proud to be a part of an administration that understands it does not have all of the answers, but that it has the respect for the Bahamian community to know that out there are a lot of people who are a lot smarter than many, if not all of us, in here. And we are prepared to talk to, work with, listen to some smart Bahamians, degreed or no degreed, who can help guide what we are considering on your behalf. So with those few words, Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to extend gratitude to the Governor General, to extend gratitude to my colleagues who have been extremely supportive, and to say to members of the public, keep the faith. There are others who will seek to identify the misery that you are experiencing, much of it which they have helped to create, and to suggest that in 4 months all should have been solved without accepting responsibility for the hundreds of millions of dollars that they have squandered or mismanaged that is no longer available to play a role in your transformation. We're asking you to see through the videos that go viral from former members of Parliament that talk about the absence of a crime plan when they themselves gave tremendous comfort to persons in that community who were operating outside of the law. And they gave comfort by offering legal services when persons like myself, who lived in one of those communities, were seeking to do two things. One, educate those young men, give them economic opportunities so they could transition out of the life that they were in. And when they were unwilling, those small segment that was unwilling to change, we were prepared to carry them kicking and screaming. And to watch the same person who offered assistance talk about the absence of a plan when they presided over the very same community without being engaged, I'm asking you to look beyond those words and examine their history. So, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I support the Prime Minister and the Cabinet's decision to give aid and support to the residents of Dominica. It is the appropriate thing to do. And enough has been said nationally on this issue, so I would only speak to those members of the Marco City community who have raised the question with me. I am firmly in support of the government's position. The government assisting others outside the country will not diminish its ability and willingness to support you during these difficult times where you have challenges. We have the capacity to do both and do both effectively. And so with those few words, Mr. Speaker, I congratulate the Governor General on the speech from the throne, and I am optimistic about the future, despite moments of frustration, moments of pain, moments of wishing we can do more for those residents we love and care about. I am optimistic that in the fullness of time, working together as a team in partnership with the community, that this administration would be transformative.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I thank you for giving effect to the ultimate sentence in Rule 33, subsection 1. For a moment, I had to scan the chambers to see if there were teleprompters present. And I commend you for your delivery. In fact, I'm even more motivated now as we proceed to enhance the chambers with further technology where we intend to get instantaneous reports from the Hansard by effectively putting a big screen in here, and perhaps even teleprompters on either side. As many? The chair recognizes the honorable member for North Abaco.
Speaker, I want to join you in commending my brother from Marco City for such a fine elucidation of the affairs of this country and of those things that are occurring in the ministry over which he presides. I also, Mr. Speaker, as I take my feet, would like to commend you for your transformative and innovative views of the future in this place. I was very pleased to hear that you didn't say that you were enforcing that rule. Just now as I was about to take to my feet. Mr. Speaker, permit me this opportunity to give thanks first to Almighty God for his grace and mercy which continues to keep me and this country and the people of North Abaco who have sent me here as we tarry on this pilgrim journey. I thank the people of North Abaco particularly for their trust in me, for the privilege that they have given me to stand in these hallowed halls, which have now stood for 288 years, representing the finest democracy, I believe, in this region. I wish also to extend my profound and heartfelt condolences to the families of Rosemary, Mother Mary Swain, and Rosanna Swain, both from Murphytown in my constituency, whom will be laid to rest this weekend. Mother Mary's son, Cedric, and I went to school together, and Rosanna's husband, Peter Swain, is my friend. We call him Petey. And I want them to know that having laid my mother to rest just a year ago, that if they lean on God, he will give them the strength to walk through this very trying and challenging period. I'd also like to say, Mr. Speaker, that as we have been mandated, we've had 2 constituency meetings in North Abaco, which were very well attended, more than 200 persons at each, which gave our constituents an opportunity to state their concerns to their Member of Parliament, to hear from local government officials, and to speak to the man that they sent to the cabinet to be a minister in the government. We also want to let you know that our offices are open. They will remain open as they ought to be so that they can share their concerns. We're also pleased to have participated in assisting those parents with their back-to-school needs. We know these are trying times in which we live. My brother spoke so eloquently about the concerns of our constituents, and I would only wish to add to that we all, I believe, as members of this place, feel their pain. We are all living in very trying times and under tremendous circumstances. We live in a time that tries men's souls. But, you know, we will not go quietly into that good night, Mr. Speaker. We will rant and rave until we get it right. We will rant and rave until we do what the Bahamian people have sent us here to do. Now, in rising to contribute to this debate, I wish to say that to you, Mr. Speaker, that I have personally thanked Her Excellency, the Governor General, for her stellar performance in reading the speech from the throne with unmatched grace and rectitude. And so I'm happy to add my approbation to those expressed toward Her Excellency, Dame Marguerite Pinley, for her stellar delivery of the speech from the throne. She's always been and continues to be gracious and elegant in the performance of her duties, as well as in her interactions with everyday Bahamians. I wish also, Mr. Speaker, to take this opportunity to congratulate the Honourable Member for Kalani for his resolute and committed leadership of our nation during the recent hurricanes. You know, Mr. Speaker, after 36 years almost in the Royal Bahamas Defence Force, I believe that I am eminently qualified to speak to the subject of leadership. I watched with tremendous admiration, and I must publicly admit, pride, as the Honourable Prime Minister, literally, albeit as expected of leaders and individuals in his position, pragmatically pulled together all of the many moving parts and navigated his nation by the grace of God through a very challenging set of circumstances. In the result, he determined to do something hitherto had not been seen in this small archipelago of ours. He instructed and actively participated in the management of the evacuation of more than 1,200 of his people, our people, from the southeastern district of this country, Michael. Never before seen in the history of this country. Never before. He didn't tell them to take to the hills or to take to caves. He feared for their safety, and so he acted. Similarly, Mr. Speaker, I have stated outside of this place, and I will state in this place, that the Prime Minister's principled position to assist the government and people of Dominica is simply the right thing to do. Dominica is a sister CARICOM nation. In this, their hour of need, the least we can do is to reach out however we can to touch them where they hurt the most. You know, real leaders, true leaders, they don't stick their finger in the air and wait to see where the political wind is blowing more exigently. True leaders, true political leaders, they act based on their personal and other convictions that their actions is simply the right thing to do in the circumstances that they face. Mr. Speaker, St. Thomas Aquinas defined the virtue of mercy in his work, Summa Theologies, as the compassion in the hearts of men for another person's misery. A compassion which drives us to do whatever we can do to help. That said, Mr. Speaker, it would be remiss of me if I also failed to thank the senior staff of my ministry for their stellar performance during the recent hurricanes. They maintained watch, as all good soldiers should, until the storm had passed us by. They were on watch, receiving inquiries about Bahamians who may have been in affected areas, and they were able to answer most of those queries. I want to say to you, Mr. Speaker, and to the country, that it is advisable that if you have students traveling, that they inform us at the nearest mission as to where they are. And so that when these events arise, and you want to know where your loved ones are, be able to more definitively speak to their presence or absence from the region where you believe they are. As it stands now, we can only speak definitively to those individuals who report to our missions that they have students in certain countries. And it is not a compulsory thing, but we ask that they consider reporting to our missions. Mr. Speaker, as the primary advisor to the government for the formulation, coordination, and conduct of foreign policy, I have determined that strategic planning with the objective of advancing our national interest is crucial to the sustainability of our diplomatic relations with our bilateral partners and international organizations. Therefore, the letter and spirit of this all that is contained in the speech, we fully embrace in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and our plans are fully underway towards implementation of those aspects within the terms of reference of my ministry. The Bahamas' foreign policy is inextricably linked to our national development objectives. Therefore, both our headquarters-based offices and overseas office, the embassies, high commissions, missions to international organizations and consulates general will have to look at the way they work through different lenses. The work of the ministry is further supported by a number of honorary consulates in the United States of America, in Europe, in Asia, in Latin America, and the Caribbean. The ministry is constantly tested by a demanding public, and it is a test that we cannot afford to fail. We will succeed by having in place mechanisms to ensure delivery of service in a professional and timely manner. Mr. Speaker, the ongoing professionalization of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is uppermost in our strategic plan to modernize the ministry. Not only have we in place well-trained and technical foreign service officers, but also the tools required to engage effectively at the global level and help to achieve our national development objectives. The implementation of a career path and salary scale for foreign service is in the final stages. And this is one of the steps needed to attract and retain young professionals in the foreign service in the required numbers. The foreign service, like other specialized occupations of the public service, such as the ministries of finance and financial services and tourism and the Department of Education, must remain competitive in order to help with the attainment of our national objectives. As part of our strategic plan for a modernized foreign service, the acquisition of a multi-purpose building suitable to serve as the ministry's headquarters is an imperative that must be realized, and it must be realized within this term. It is it is necessary for us to have in foreign affairs an edifice from which we can manage all of the affairs of foreign affairs. As it relates now, we are scattered across New Providence, which makes us less efficient and less able to produce as we know we ought to. And we believe with one edifice, we will improve our work output as well as our fiscal savings in these austere times in which we live. With respect to foreign service training and development, we continue to interact with international agencies and bilateral partners to secure access to training and international best practices. The first stage of the Foreign Service Institute was launched earlier this year by the Foreign Service and Training Division under the leadership of the division head, who, by the way, acted recently as my permanent secretary, Ms. Donna Lowe, and did a stellar job throughout the recent weather events. The first phase consisted of a 5-week Foreign Service induction training program for newly recruited Foreign Service officers. These young officers are now working in various divisions of the ministry and showing great promise. You know, Mr. Speaker, I believe a new day has dawned in foreign affairs. Young Foreign Service officers are now excited that they are able to apply their education and intellectual acumen to the affairs of the development of this country. Many of them, before time, were just overlooked and sat by. And the sacrifices of their parents, the sacrifices that they made in school, was just ignored. But we have determined that we will institute a proper rotational period, that they will go out and be able to apply their ability in helping to make the Bahamas what we know it ought to be. And so since the launch of the Institute, I have engaged in dialogue aimed at securing funding and other resources for the training necessary to transform our foreign service into one that works smart, works hard when you have to, but to work smart. This includes combining forces with partners, both domestic and international, so that critical, overarching matters pertaining to our economy, our national security, will stand up and develop. You know, foreign policy, in my humble opinion, having been in the post for 4 months, should always redound or inure to the benefit of Bahamians, either economically or in improving their national security disposition. Yes, we in the Foreign Service will provide consular services as required wherever we find ourselves. But foreign policy and strategic planning must engage and involve deliberately the improvement of the economy of the Bahamas. There's no point us having missions all over the world, and at the end of the day, we cannot benchmark what comes home from these missions. There must be improvement in our economy. There must be improvement in our national security. And we are determined, Mr. Speaker, to move aggressively in this direction as we engage our international partners and organizations. Discussion with the University of the Bahamas continues towards the goal of making the Institute a full-fledged establishment, capable not only of training foreign service officers, but also eventually to attract persons desirous of a career in the foreign service, and to train them in studies related to diplomacy and international relations. There are a lot of people out there who simply want to be trained in how to operate in the diplomatic corps and in the foreign service. And we believe, with the help of the University of the Bahamas and with our Foreign Service Institute, we can start up this area of education and academia in the Bahamas. We can all become involved and engaged in whatever we wish to do. You know, when I look at where I come from, anything is possible in the Bahamas. Yeah. And over a very short period of time. And none of our dreams are unattainable. All we need, Mr. Speaker, you know, we punch well above our weight in this little country. We are a country of less than 400,000 people. But there is nothing in the world, I believe, that Bahamians cannot do when they put their hearts and their minds to it. I believe that from the bottom of my soul. we produced the first Academy Award performer, Mr. Sidney Poitier, from Cat Island. I mean, Cat Island, you can knock for that, man. You can touch the desk for that, right? We have Olympians. We have Olympians that hail from Fire Road and North Abaco, right? We just produced another gold medalist who hails from North Abaco, whose mother lives in Murphytown. You know, the 400-meter specialist and expert. King of the Bahamas, we call him now. King of the Bahamas. He's an Abaco boy, and we're very proud of him. Very, very proud of him. Mr. Speaker, paramount among our ministerial and institutional goals is to serve the public with more efficiency. In order to serve Bahamians more effectively, we have to put in place systems to provide information in a timely manner. You know, coming from the military, I was surprised that we didn't have in the Foreign Service, which is, in fact, declared in legislation a discipline force. We didn't have a duty roster where Bahamians could contact, or anyone in the world could contact our Foreign Service on a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week basis. And since coming to that ministry, we have instructed, and it has now been functioning for a couple of months, a proper duty rotation system that a Bahamian, if he's stuck or she is stuck anywhere in the world, can reach out and find another Bahamian at the end of the phone that they can speak to and get the necessary assistance that they require. And if you need to contact Foreign Affairs for any reason, just go to our Facebook page or official website where you will find the numbers. Or you can leave a message to reach out to us. Information about the work of the ministry is updated regularly on our sites and quickly as the ministry tries to keep pace with social media and all other medium to give information to Bahamians. For example, Mr. Speaker, as soon as I returned from my recent participation in the 72nd session of the United Nations General Assembly, I addressed the press at the airport to report all that I had been done. You know, Mr. Speaker, I know I only have an hour, so I can soldier on here in a minute. But, Mr. Speaker, it is a long way for a little boy from Dundas Town to stand before the Green Marble in New York in the UN General Assembly. A long way.
God is good.
God is good. God is good. To stand before the Green Marble of the UN and speak to the nations of the world on behalf of your nation. And to God, I am eternally grateful for the opportunity. Yes. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, while I was in New York, information was reported to the press and uploaded to the website and social media instantly. The improved way of communicating has proven to be useful in terms of keeping the Bahamian public informed about the work of the ministry and thereby keeping us transparent and accountable as we promised the Bahamian people that we would be. It has also served the purpose of providing needed information to the public during emergency and special situations. For example, during Hurricane Irma, we kept the public informed about the closure and reopening of our offices in Havana, Miami, and Atlanta, and the status of our staff members and nationals in those jurisdictions. To make all of this possible was a team of dedicated officers, both at our headquarters and overseas, under the leadership of the management team in my ministry, which, as I indicated earlier, operated on a 24-hour basis to ensure that the public was served in a timely manner and, wherever possible, chimed in to do what they could to make the lives of Bahamians better. Mr. Speaker, we in Foreign Affairs must always work toward improving existing diplomatic relations while developing new relations. By so doing, we position our country to better realize its full potential. When we are operating optimally in Foreign Affairs, it should be felt by Bahamians in Grand Key, North Abaco, and also by Bahamians in Matthewtown and Agua. The Bahamas' foreign policy objective, among other things, recognizes that the establishment of diplomatic relations with like-minded friendly nations is a key component to this policy. Establishment of such relations have proven to be beneficial and assist the national development by way of accessing much-needed technical assistance, vast investment opportunities, tourism, cultural and educational exchanges. You know, Mr. Speaker, while at the UN, I had the opportunity to address a special session called by the General Assembly President for countries impacted by the hurricane. And we were able to speak deliberately to the fact that climate change is wreaking havoc in this region of ours. We were able to say to them unabashedly that we who are less defensive with CO2, black CO2 emissions, are suffering more deliberately in this region. And we were able to call upon the international community to reconsider in the way that they look at overseas development assistance and loans to small island developing states such as the Bahamas, who lie in harm's way. Because we can come into this place and make all kinds of arrangements with our budget. We can seek to stand up all kinds of social developments and improve our country. But with one fell swoop, we will run into a Joaquin, a Matthew, or an Irma, which will set us back 10, 20 years if these things are not considered. And so we asked them to look at a vulnerability index instead of just looking at GDP or GNP as it relates to how they consider the type of assistance and aid we can get from foreign and international lending communities and organizations. And we hope that they took cognizance of it, because we are in a paradigm, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to have to forego a lot of this, where we're going to have to build, we're in a paradigm where we're going to have to build homes that are more resilient, homes that are more sustainable. We're going to have to do what the Prime Minister proposes to do on Ragged Island. We're going to have to build in the Bahamas green environments. That we who stand in dire straits, if the current affairs of the world continues as it relates to climate change in the direction that it is going, we stand to lose the most. And so I believe we must stand to lead in this regard. And so we were happy for the opportunity to express to the international community and to potential donors the Bahamas' intention in this regard. Mr. Speaker, in addition to the ongoing and other technical assistance and training offers that we have already received from countries and partners, the Bahamas receives technical assistance from some 12 countries at present. China, however, continues to be the largest donor in the area of technical assistance. In 2017 calendar year, we were the recipients of 14 full-term scholarships and 60 short-term courses thus far. And I take this opportunity to thank the many donor countries who have continued to offer assistance through training opportunities for countless Bahamians. This continues to play an integral role in the development for Bahamians, and both in the public as well as the private sector. Studies have been pursued at the bachelor's, master's, and PhD levels, and in a wide range of disciplines relative to our national objectives in areas such as agriculture, engineering, medicine, art, broadcasting, and management science. As we receive offers of assistance from various countries, organizations, and groupings, the ministry will continue to share them with government ministries, private industry, as well as all schools and universities throughout the country, and encourage Bahamians to make good use of these offerings. Foreign Service officers, as mentioned above, have received training in diplomacy and international relations from institutes in Mexico, in Chile, Netherlands, India, and Korea. And let me, Mr. Speaker, pause to take this opportunity as the Foreign Minister of the Bahamas to do so in this place, as we have done through formal means, to extend our condolences as a people to all of those countries impacted by recent unusual weather events who have suffered death as a result. Our friends in Mexico are still yet dealing with the ravages of earthquakes, as we are in this region dealing with the ravages of hurricanes. And I want them to know that our prayers and thoughts are with them. Our objective, Mr. Speaker, will be strengthened and deepened by our diplomatic relations around the globe to foster our national security, particularly of our maritime boundaries, through delimitation and bilateral arrangements, to curtail incursions, and to make our country safer. Mr. Speaker, we share maritime borders with a lot of countries. No country that shares a border can keep itself safe without the assistance of the country with whom they share those borders. And so, Mr. Speaker, I can tell you that one of the strategic reasons why the United States of America has engaged so deliberately with the Bahamas is because we share that border. You know, the Caribbean region has been referred to as the third border of the United States. Well, every time I talk to people, I like to tell them that we are the gatekeepers of the third border. And so we are of valuable strategic importance to those countries with whom we share borders. But we must move aggressively to engage those countries with whom we share borders. And so to engage them with a view of asking them to consider, as we have with the Americans back in the 80s when we were having such tremendous challenges with drug trafficking and other maritime ills, to engage us in comprehensive maritime agreements that will allow us, those countries that are unable, to rest our vessels within their borders, within their waters, with their officials on board, that we can better protect them and protect ourselves in the process, where we can perhaps save lives of those risking their life, coming toward a better way of life, hopefully for their children. These are some of the things that we are looking at very deliberately and very aggressively in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And so, Mr. Speaker, we have recently reconvened our delimitation process by having the committee meet with all of the relevant agencies in the country with a view at finalizing or delimiting our boundaries between ourselves and the United States of America. And this is important for us to do on many levels and for many reasons. We will also deliberately engage with those in the United Kingdom as it relates to Turks and Caicos, so that we can delimit our boundaries between them and with the others. There's Turks and Caicos and there's Haiti and the Dominican Republic, with whom we've done it with Cuba. And so these countries still remain extant in this regard. And we must move aggressively toward this effort. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas relies on development support for the achievement of its goals and objectives. And to some extent, we also give support to other countries in those areas where we have recognized expertise and competence. So we don't only receive, we also give where we can. We've experienced destruction as a result of Hurricanes Irma, and our tourism product remains largely intact. Whilst I was in New York trying to explain to the international community and the international organizations that give that we need assistance in the Bahamas too, I got a call from the Minister of Tourism, who said to me, be careful. Because he said that, we are an archipelago of islands. And by that what he meant was that we we in this region, as an archipelago, we have multiple destinations where tourists can come. So if we're impacted in Maikal or in the southeastern Bahamas, we still have Abaco and Eleuthera. You know I ain't gonna leave Abaco, right? Abaco and Eleuthera and Exuma and Grand Bahama and those other areas that are still open for business. But he put me in a particular quandary, because here you are in a place where people have suffered the ravages of these storms. But you know, my answer was that some of us have to be in a position to help others. And so we determined to say to our caucus in CARICOM that we must find a way to let the international community know that the Caribbean region, although impacted severely by these weather events, we are still open for business and tourism in this region, and more particularly so in the Bahamas. The Bahamas could have had the extreme type of devastation and loss of life that took place in Dominica and Barbuda and Turks and Caicos and other parts of the region. Last year, in the aftermath of Hurricane Matthew, you know, Prime Minister Skerritt, the then chair of the CARICOM heads of government, led a team of persons to visit the impacted areas of the Bahamas. And thereafter, the Prime Minister advocated for assistance to be given to the Bahamas. This year, I accompanied, along with another minister, Minister Folks, we accompanied Prime Minister Mitchell from Grenada, the current chair of CARICOM, the heads of CARICOM. And we did the same thing as he moved through the Caribbean region with SEDEMA and the RSS to look at the devastation impacted or inflicted upon the region by Irma and other weather events, to assess the needs of the Bahamas. And we were delighted to do so. We took him to Ragged Island, where he got a bird's eye view of what had occurred in that island. A meeting in which I participated and I informed the global community of what had happened in the Bahamas actually wound up online in a copy of a Time magazine. And we're grateful for that, because anything that we can do to put the Bahamas in the view of the world is a good thing. It's a very good thing. We cannot afford to be selfish, Mr. Speaker. We cannot afford to be singular in our approach. We are a part of a community of nations, and we must do our part always. And so it is clear that we live in an environment based on trust and reliance in each other to build our strength. CARICOM and the countries of CARICOM are invaluable partners in helping us to become better. You know, one preacher used to say, alone, we are just a voice. But together, we are a force. And so when we come together as a CARICOM community and we speak with one voice, but with the power to vote as one individual country, that says a lot to the international community. That says that when we stand together, we are able to achieve far more than when we try or seek to stand alone. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas has representation by our honorary councils in 28 countries around the world. These honorary councils who perform services on a voluntary basis provide an additional source of representation for the Bahamas where embassies, consulates, or high commissions are unavailable. The main functions of the honorary councils are to assist Bahamian nationals in distress, traveling or living within their jurisdiction. In addition to attracting potential new investments for the country, Mr. Speaker, they do an invaluable service. During the events of Harvey, which visited itself upon Texas, I was able to speak to our honorary council there on a daily basis to ascertain the well-being of Bahamians. And it was a blessing to have him there, to be able to do so. His name eludes me now, or I would have called it. Mr. Speaker, we are currently reviewing to determine whether or not we are getting the best service possible from our honorary councils. We have honorary councils placed in jurisdictions that are of strategic value. We need to establish honorary councils in more jurisdictions. But we need to be able to estimate. We need to be able to benchmark. We got to stop doing stuff just for doing things' sake. We have to be able to realize whether or not we are achieving the objectives and goals that we set out to when we headed in a particular direction. And so that means that we always have to revisit and re-examine and reevaluate and reassess what we're doing and what we're seeking to achieve. But, Mr. Speaker, nonetheless, I wish to thank honorary councils for the invaluable service they provide to the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, as I seek to wrap up here shortly, brain drain continues to challenge our region. The Bahamas is no exception. So the government will focus on initiatives that develop our involvement and inclusion of the Bahamian diaspora. Steps have already been taken within my ministry to support this objective. Under the office of the Director General, a team of talented officers has been composed to prepare an action plan for engaging the diaspora. The ministry will work in close collaboration with the Office of the Prime Minister and other relevant ministries to implement our action plan. A message has already been sent out to all of the overseas offices, asking them to update their databases of nationals in their jurisdictions and to provide information as to how they currently engage with the diaspora and their views on how to improve such engagement. A register of the diaspora and skills bank will be established in all of our overseas missions. They are going to be required to maintain a database of Bahamians that are willing and prepared. You know, my brother from Marco City indicated that we don't believe that all that we need to improve the Bahamas reside in this place. You know, I'll go a little further to say, Mr. Speaker, that we don't believe that all that we need to improve and develop the Bahamas wears a particular color. There are less than 400,000 of us. We need each and every Bahamian, wherever they might be found, to help us to create and develop the type of country that we seek to leave for our children and generations. And so, Mr. Speaker, I had the pleasure to accompany the Prime Minister as we traveled into Atlanta, and we met with over 100 persons of the diaspora who, 100 persons, Bahamians or Bahamian heritage, who are willing to engage and help us to develop the type of Bahamas that we need. This was followed by my meeting with the Bahamian diaspora last week in New York when I attended the General Assembly. I didn't draw the kind of crowds that he did, you know, but we had 60. We had 60 excited Bahamians who were willing to hear what we had to say about creating and developing a jobs bank that will list their professions, that will list their interests. And when foreign direct investors come to the Bahamas seeking to engage us in investments, we will be in a position to say to them, firstly, look to Bahamians before you look to import foreign nationals to do jobs in the Bahamas. And wherever Bahamians may be found, we will recommend that those Bahamians be first considered before allowing a foreigner to come to the Bahamas and take advantage of job opportunities within our country. On both occasions, I was pleased to see the wide range of skills and expertise represented in the diaspora. Mr. Speaker, we have very talented Bahamians, as I said, medical and health profession, judges, academics, banking and financial services experts, information technology, all kinds of engineers, and people engaged in culture and arts. I was equally pleased to see the many students pursuing degrees at all levels, including PhDs. Mr. Speaker, to be honest, we in this government intend to attract every Bahamian, wherever they might be found in the world, back home to the Bahamas, where they will have equal opportunity. They don't have to know anybody. They don't have to be able to pick up the phone and call anybody. All they need to do is work hard, persevere, approve themselves, and come back and present themselves and say, here I am, ready to serve my country. And they will be given opportunity. Our pool in the diaspora is rich, and we can draw from it to contribute to nation building. Members of the diaspora, as you can see, they represent a wide scope of discipline. And if they are to return to the Bahamas, would make a viable and enormous contribution to the further development of our country. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm not oblivious to the reality that many among them are not really able to reestablish themselves in our country, as they have established themselves firmly in other places. Nevertheless, I was quite pleased at the indicated interest to be in touch with their brothers and sisters back home and to show proudly their Bahamian roots. Mr. Speaker, the role of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in this regard is to work throughout our missions and with our bilateral partners and with international agencies to establish these mechanisms that will cause us to judiciously engage the diaspora. The government, through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, will do whatever it can to empower, to encourage Bahamians abroad, to promote the Bahamas as an eager and full participant in Caribbean and international affairs. This can be achieved by individuals just joining or speaking at and contributing at foreign-based cultural and civic organizations. They can just let their voices be heard as Bahamians, and proudly so. The ministry will utilize its public affairs capabilities to showcase both locally and internationally such participation. This would also have the effect of improving diplomatic relations with the various partners, as Bahamians are seen to be active in their bilateral affairs. This is very important to us. And, you know, we should seek also where Bahamians are established to create sister cities and have the type of engagements of mutual assistance. I was so pleased in Atlanta to see a group of Bahamians come out and with their goatskin drums and cowbells and whistles and spanked up a quick rush. Spanked up a quick rush, you know. I started, when I saw the goatskin drums and cowbells, I started praying for the Prime Minister. Because I knew it took all of his strength to muster, to keep on his jacket and not take it off and grab a pair of cowbells and to ring them deliberately in Atlanta.
Give him say hi.
You know my brother from South Andrews, the burdens and the benefits run with the land. The burdens and the benefits, they run with the land. You know, government, I hear it all the time, you know, government is continuous. So you can't just give us the burdens and abrogate unto yourselves the benefits. You know? Mr. Speaker, the government of the Bahamas is committed to a holistic approach to governance, ensuring that a comprehensive approach to all of the challenges that we face are met with resolve and determination. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, our primary objective is to ensure, and I repeat this, is to ensure that the foreign policy of this government, of this country, is articulated and advanced in the international arena to bring tangible benefits to Bahamians. While at first blush the issue of maritime delimitation may not appear to be one of great national significance, it is a critical and foundational issue that has far-reaching implications. The establishment of our maritime borders creates a degree of legal certainty that will allow the Bahamas to fully express its jurisdictional authority over and to govern its maritime space in a manner that would strengthen security and advance sustainable growth and development. Mr. Speaker, we are taking efforts to improve our consular and passport services, and so that it will continue to provide what the Bahamian people expects. But, Mr. Speaker, I must say at this time, even at great risk, that the amount of monies invested by the government of the Bahamas into our e-passport and online services, it was tremendous. It was a necessary investment. But we have to consider now, Mr. Speaker, we must consider the cost or the price of obtaining our passports. Right now, to get a passport, I believe it's $25 and $50, respectively, for children and adults. And we must reconsider, because of these attendant costs, to produce these passports. And we are now producing them in less than 2 weeks. And this is tremendous. This is good. This is good for our country. And the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is proud of the accomplishments in the delivery of passport services, which has seen unprecedented levels of improvement since the rollout of the new e-passport system in January of this year. The Ministry remains committed to the continued improvement of passport services and looks forward to working smoothly with all other, who's that? Russell? Oh, Clarence. Oh yeah, Clarence. You know, Mr. Speaker, the Chief Passport Officer is doing a tremendous job down at the passport office, you know. You know, I spent South Andrews, I spent my whole life in working for the public service. And you know, when I did, that's why everybody was surprised when I came to politics and ended up in red. You know what I did? I served the government of the day. That's what good public servants do. Good public servants will come to work on a daily basis, and you won't know what their political persuasions are.
That's right.
And that, unless we change that in our country, we can continue to hamper the growth and development of our country. I don't need to walk into my registry and see a PLP mug or an F&M t-shirt draping a chair. I don't need to see that. All I need to see is a committed, devoted Bahamian, a nationalist, committed to the cause of building a better Bahamas. Now, that's why he let me sit with him. I watch you, you know. I watch you and the preacher. As I walked in, and I'd like to take this opportunity too to congratulate Bishop Ellis, a trailblazer and a nation builder, for all of the good work that he's doing and he has done in the past 30 years in Mount Tabor and in the Pinewood area. A national hero. I say that unabashedly. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and its mission overseas should be seen as a trusted partner in active engagement between Bahamians and stakeholders and friends of the Bahamas who want to help us. In particular, we need to work closely. If we are going to achieve our goals, Mr. Speaker, we need to work closely with the Ministry of Tourism, the Ministry of Financial Services, Bahamas Investment Authority, and the Chamber of Commerce to invigorate the work of the existing mission in Asia in the first instance and to benefit from more direct trade and investment. Mr. Speaker, I wish also to say that we are currently engaged in putting together a high-level mission which will include the Prime Minister and other ministers of the Cabinet to Haiti, where we can sit down and speak with them deliberately about the issues that we face in this region, particularly as it relates to migration and security and economy. You know, we're going to have to start doing some things differently. Buying boats and planes and hiring more manpower ain't going to solve this problem that we have. We're going to have to move more strategically and effectively and engaging our partners and our neighbors to solve many of these issues that we have. And so, Mr. Speaker, in the implementation of our national goals and objectives, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs must have a seat at all of the relevant interministerial and interagency committees in the capital. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and its missions overseas must always be involved and trusted to do what they are sent to do and to work as Bahamians committed to the cause of improving the Bahamas and to making us what I believe, to helping to keep us where we are and to making us what I believe that the world sees us as, is that best little country in the world, whose people continue to punch above its weight, whose people will go to the ends of the earth to let them know wherever we find them, that we are Bahamian and we are proud to be so. We are Bahamian and we salute the flag. We stand firmly before the flag and we reverence the national anthem as Bahamians. And that we are all one people working toward the development and growth of this one country that we love. It's one country that I served all my life and continue to do so from this place by the grace of God. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. As many? The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Angliston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the good people of Angliston to contribute to this debate on the resolution to thank Her Excellency for her delivery of the speech from the throne. And but before I do so, Mr. Speaker, get into the body of that, I wanted to begin by expressing my sadness for the loss of, but in thanksgiving for the lives of two Bahamians. The first is Idina Burrows. Speaker, Idina Burrows is one of the early and few women unionists in this Bahamas. She previously served as president of the BCPOU and later headed the Association of Retirees of that union. Mr. Speaker, she is probably one of the finest people I have ever met. She was a trailblazer, a labor leader extraordinaire. She was strong, she was wise, she was progressive, she was resolute. She was at the same time, however, in that rough unionist world, kind, fair, balanced. She mentored so many men and women in this country. And she had the gift of maintaining a continuing relevance, even into her latter years. I think she was in her early 80s when she died. But even at that point, because I saw her not so long ago, she had a stellar, stunning presence and a relevance in our reality. And I am trusting that her life's work and her contribution will be appropriately commemorated by this government or by her membership or however, but at some mass national level for generations yet unborn to note and revere. I also want to send condolences to the family of Kenneth Motorboat Ferguson. And we heard him spoken of yesterday. And he's actually a descendant of Acklands. I'm a descendant of Acklands. And he's the grandson to the late and distinguished patriarch H.O. Ferguson. And for any of those who can go way back, he was one of these, H.O. Ferguson, that is, one of the great patriarchs in our early history and one of the freedom fighters that emanated from Acklands. Kenneth was his grandson. And Kenneth died while in public service. Just prior to the date of his death, he was serving as assistant controller, of the road traffic department in Grand Bahama, where he had served for many years. He was a Junkanoo, very well known and very influential in the Junkanoo world, and in particular in the Junkanoo world in Grand Bahama. He's a former athlete, is highly popular and could be described as an influential cultural activist. So I want to extend heartfelt condolences to the families of both Idina Burroughs and Kenneth Ferguson on the loss of these two great Bahamians, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, believe it or not, we are debating a resolution to thank the Governor General for the speech from the throne. It's been some time since we had that speech in the blazing sun of Rawson Square. I think it was about 4 months ago. And so I want the Governor General to forgive our delay in thanking her. And we're hearing from ministers. I was hoping by the time that I was on my feet that we would have heard from more ministers, but as we'll await the rest of the debate to see the elucidation and the amplification of the policies outlined outlined in the speech from the throne. So, Mr. Speaker, it feels like almost worlds ago since that speech with its lofty ideals and high proclamations was given in Rawson Square. And I will agree with all that we've heard, that the Governor General executed her delivery with precision, poise, and grace. I think all of us know that Dame Marguerite is one of the surviving matriarchs of our country who is closely connected with the Quiet Revolution. And she has actually had great proximity to the pivotal moments of our history. So we had, that experience had greater meaning than perhaps in other circumstances. Her Excellency articulated the vision of her government, the new government, which was swept into power by a tidal wave, I would describe it, in the result of general elections of May 2017. But like I said, Mr. Speaker, 4 months ago feels almost like a lifetime right up and now. We started with the glorious chant of, "It's the people's time." And then we have watched in awe at an almost weird unfolding. That's what I would call it. We, in that speech, were made privy to an aggressive agenda, which was outlined. Policies to create a new economy, mass concessions to communities in the inner city of New Providence, constitutional reform, a revitalized Grand Bahama economy, a bright future for young people, a pledge to listen to the voice and aspirations, dreams, hopes, and desires of our people, an aggressive plan to alleviate crime. Mr. Speaker, from that sunny day in Rawson Square, with the splash of the bright colors and the celebratory atmosphere, much tumult has unfolded from that day. In fact, it's like night and day from the moment of that speech and where we are today. We see glaring inconsistencies with promises in that speech and in the campaign which preceded it, the election campaign, the rally pulpit. And then we look at the facts on the ground. You know, some people started believing it was the people's time. But now we wonder, whose time is it really? And that sounds a bit cliched now because so many people are asking it all over the place. The great promises that I've outlined seem to have fallen by the wayside, now withering in the sun. And we've seen, Mr. Speaker, colossal backtracking, like I've never seen in politics in my life. No free education with boarding at the University of the Bahamas. No great economic injection for Engliston or Baintown or Centerville. VAT went from being in the campaign a regressive tax to a highly positive tax, according to the same spokesman, the same one person now, who's now the Minister of Finance. Same person. You know? But now, and we're hearing now talks of income tax. Income tax. That's not what the minister said in his communication. You want me to pull it? I heard what the minister said. Now, if you want me to pull that, we can lay it to prove the inconsistencies. Speaker, yes, from that same member, VAT went from being a regressive tax. That's what he said in opposition. And in government, he said it was a wonderful, highly positive tax that was efficient, et cetera, et cetera. Speaker, the promise of VAT exemption on breadbasket items has now flatlined. And we're hearing now about talks of income tax. And we want some clarity because I see some inconsistent noises about this place. So we've gone from VAT ain't no good to VAT is great, and now we're hearing income tax, Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for East
Given
Grand Bahama.
the implication that the government of the Bahamas has made any mention about the implementation of any income tax. I just want to disabuse her and the public of that view, because there has not been any discussion with respect to the implementation of an income tax.
Mr. Speaker, I'm just wondering if the member is now telling the Bahamian people that that's ruled out.
I didn't say that either.
Oh, you didn't say that either? Okay.
Say what I said.
You said what you said. The member is not going to rule it out, though. But we hearing talk about income tax. That's what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker. No, we hearing it, but the government don't want to rule it out. Bahamians better be listening. VAT gone from being a regressive tax to a wonderful tax to no exemption from tax, from VAT tax. Remember we heard it, Mr. Speaker? We heard that VAT was going to come off bread basket items for the poor. So we got this journey of VAT now. VAT is this interesting animal in the politics of the Bahamas. It was no good in opposition. It's beautiful in government. It ain't coming off what you say it's coming off. And now we're hearing about even new forms of taxation, which the minister is indicating has not been discussed but will not be ruled out. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, that's okay. I'm not speaking to you, though. I'm speaking that my audience is the speaker and whoever else hears through the speaker in this country. Yes, that's okay. And so, Mr. Speaker, and then, another concern, Mr. Speaker, I have is whether, because I've heard description of the public service being bloated and all this language. And I'm wondering now, Mr. Speaker, if the ground is being softened now to do some things in the public service. I don't know. We're hearing some dialogue. I want Bahamians to be very alert and alive and awake. First of all, watch the inconsistencies, watch the contradictions, and listen to the new conversations that are now being introduced into our lives as Bahamians. Speaker. Speaker, we came in here, the new government, after all of this, backtrack on everything, borrowed more than $700 million. And we have yet to receive a real explanation as to why this has happened, Speaker. We want to stay tuned now. We're now 4 months in, the money probably being spent as we speak. And now we're saying we must stay tuned, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, and the other thing that I'm concerned about, Speaker, they are playing politics with the fiscal facts, such that one is left to wonder, where is the truth? You in here saying, the government in here saying one thing, the central bank saying something else, you wondering what is going on. But now if we want to assess now, because when you're trying to assess credibility, Mr. Speaker, you got to do the weighing exercise. And I want the Bahamians in the weighing exercise to remember the journey. I'll use just the VAT. When we got plenty of examples. But you see how VAT transformed as a creature from a monster to Cinderella or whatever beautiful creature you want to call it. And so you have to really, Mr. Speaker, be very concerned about the credibility of the voices coming from that side, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, and we still await, I want them to know, I ain't forget, we're still awaiting the national accounts. And I'm hoping the minister, when he speaks, will tell us where the national accounts are, because my understanding was that they were supposed to come in June. We're now in September. They've not come yet, but that will give you, I believe, a truer indicator of our economy. And I think that I want to see whether we're going to see some facts in those national accounts which do not align with what has been represented in this parliament. But I don't know. I will wait to see what those national accounts tell us. No, I do not know. I do not know. I'm waiting for it to be delivered. But if you don't mind, let me speak on behalf of Angleton without East Grand Bahama heckling me, please. Thank you. Let me speak in peace. Let me speak in peace. Because you got to speak. Angleton ain't gonna want me to listen here. Listen here. Listen here. Angliston will not want me to interrupt you because they won't hear you. They want you to explain these things, you know. And, you know, just on that issue, Mr. Speaker, and I don't want to, you know, I just want to refer to a rule in this Parliament, which talks, when you talk about other people in this Parliament who don't sit in this Parliament, and it's Rule 33, and my colleague from Kera and Rumkey and San Salvador already referred to it, but I want to reiterate it. The rules of this House do not allow us to come in here and speak ill of people who do not sit in this House in their private capacity. I just want to reiterate that. But I want to say to you that Angliston will listen to you, East Grand Bahama, because we want you to explain these glaring, uncomfortabilities that we are facing right now. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, our heirs now.
Honorable
Sorry,
member,
Speaker, yes.
for the benefit of the House and myself,
Yes, Speaker.
which rule are you
Sorry, Mr.
referring
Speaker.
to?
Oh, sorry, I didn't? Okay. It's Rule 33, 23. There is it, 23. Yes. Reference shall not be made in debate of the character or conduct of any person, except in his official or public capacity. I'm just referring to it in passing in my presentation, Mr. Speaker. It's not a foundational point. I'm just reiterating what our obligation is as members of this House, and the fact that when East Grand Bahama speaks, Angliston will sit down and will not say anything. Okay, but let me put it this way. I'll say it this way. I'll say it. I'll try. I'll try. I'll try. I'll try. I'll try. I'll try. No, but seriously, our heirs are now being perked on the strategic dropping. They're hearing it, and I think they call them, what do you call it? What do you call it? The private, the public utilities. The what's the acronym? Huh? SOEs. So now we hearing this SOEs. Now I wondering now, and you don't really hear, it's spelled out like this: state-owned enterprises. We keep hearing about these SOEs, and how we're going to privatize these SOEs. But what are these SOEs? They're the delivery potentially of water in our country, the delivery of electricity in our country, and then of course we've heard it said about Bahamas Air. Now, I raise that, Mr. Speaker, because we got to be very, very careful how, in my view, these fundamental initiatives or these policy initiatives are being, in my view, almost casually imposed on us in the dialogue, when in truth these are very serious undertakings. And we remember Batelco. We remember Batelco and what happened there. That was a basic giveaway. It undermined, I don't even go through the details of it. Batelco was one of the debacles of our history. It was also a sort of monumental underestimation of the spirit and innovation that the member for North Abaco spoke about, of who we are. And you know, here we are now with a foreign company running our telecommunications when Bahamians built that. So I say that only to say that if we're going to get into this conversation, that I'm inviting the government to begin to attach the importance and seriousness of it, so that Bahamians begin to connect to what may be their policy commitments within the during this term. Speaker. Yeah, that's not the same thing. I'm not on private component. BPL, it was a private component. I'm talking about divesting ownership from the people of the Bahamas to private entity and you know, oftentimes non-Bahamian entities, commercial entities. And Mr. Speaker, we know we've seen what the IMF said recently, and they made a lot of recommendations and all that. And I think at some point, as best the government can, understanding the delicacies of that issue, they could put assurances to the Bahamian people that there's some things that they will not do that might have been recommended in that, if they see fit. Speaker, the other example of the backtracking was Bahama. I talk about VAT and then other things, but Bahama transitioned almost miraculously, because in opposition was that big dirty edifice with a fake opening and the con artist sale. And then suddenly, it became the great white hope to our economy. The bright eye interviews that we saw after the full cabinet did the tour of the hotel, you know, it was a very different dialogue from what we had been what the propaganda was. I use that terminology. And by the way, Mr. Speaker, the so-called lack of transparency that they said we were guilty of under the prior administration and relative to the unsealing the documents on the Bahamas sale, when the new government came in, it became something different. It became this legal matter subject to the exigencies of a court order, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, Mr. Speaker, this is what we've seen since that beautiful exposition by Dame Marguerite in Rawson Square. And since then, the dialogue has been blame piled upon blame and excuse after excuse. It's the other fellas, the other fellas, the other fellas. And then, Mr. Speaker, you see the definitive assertions made about the Caribbean insurance. We were blamed for discontinuing it. I think a letter was supposed to be laid. It ain't laid yet, Mr. Speaker, and I want to reiterate and ask again for the government to lay the letter. The Prime Minister indicated he would lay the letter. I'm asking him to lay the letter, Mr. Speaker. And then, you know, an explanation was given as to why that insurance, we know what insurance companies, don't we? I mean, we all know, right? It's not a straightforward reality. A decision was made that the government would not continue with that insurance policy because you're paying and 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 paying, and you can't claim. Now, the insurance company then wrote to the new government and say, man, don't worry about them other fellas. Come do business with me. Well, they did business with them. They did business with them. And what they did, they paid $2.6 million, because we were stupid, dumb, and whatever, for a premium. And then out of it, they got a payout of $397,598. Let me get these figures again, Mr. Speaker. We paid $2.6 million. We got $397,598. And guess what the minister said? Well, at least we get something. Didn't he say that? At least we get something. Okay. All I know is they had some scheme called the pineapple scheme, whatever it is. This looked like this was even more vexing than what that complaint was out there. That's how it looks. Yes. Help me? So, I mean, the Bahamian people could wait, you know. We paid $2.6 million. I think the Prime Minister also said, because I think the member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador raised this issue front and central, and the Prime Minister indicated that you are a government of transparency, and the documents would be laid. So as a reminder of the transparency credo, I'm asking you to lay the letters, including the one that you promised you'd lay 3-4 months ago, and then the letters you promised this member 2 weeks ago. We'd be grateful if you lay that on the, because you made certain assertions, and so far the facts are not bearing out your assertions. So, Mr. Speaker, this has been a truly transformative period from the speech of the throne, from the throne in Rawson Square to now. It is like a tale of two cities. And I'll tell you why I call it a tale of two cities. Because you had this great celebratory mode, and then you had what I would call an assault on the Bahamian people. You have a housing program which was in place to alleviate substandard housing in this country. There was a claim of irregularities with that, okay? But that means you would stop a program of that nature. It was violently ended. And Mr. Speaker, I can tell you, for those of us who represent constituencies like the one I represent, where you're not the wealthiest people in our country, you will know that people live in conditions that we should be embarrassed about. And you know, there's this tendency to say, well, you was the member of parliament. Well, if you expect a member of parliament to address the fundamental systemic issue of housing in a community, simplicity, then you don't appreciate the issue. This is a fundamental policy initiative. which we undertook, Mr. Speaker. And that program, as far as I see the Minister of Works poising and stuff, he could disabuse me of it because I'm an Angliston. It was stopped. Yeah, sure.
Chair recognizes the honourable member.
Speaker, it would be
Walker
helpful
Michael.
to us to understand what program the honourable member is speaking about. I'm not seeking to interrupt you.
No, I don't mind.
I want to hear what you have to say.
I really appreciate that. You want to hear me. Thank you. So nice to know you want to hear me. No, I yielded to you, so there's no question of interrupting. And, I'm talking about the, there was only one program that I'm aware of that was designed when we were in office to alleviate substandard housing. It was part of the Urban Renewal Initiative. That's what it was. It was a small house repair program. Yes, under urban renewal. Sorry? It hasn't. Oh, I've been. Oh boy, it hasn't been stopped. Boy, people of Angliston, I'm glad. Well, huh? Wow, it hasn't been stopped. I know that there's some. I know that there is. Is that the one we're talking about now with the 5 houses or something different? Okay. Well, I'm being told now, Mr. Speaker, and the people of Angliston will be very happy to know, because that memo ain't reached us yet, that the small house repair program has not been stopped, Mr. Speaker, because people in this country, many people are living in substandard conditions. Speaker, I have come across situations where elderly persons have serious leaks in their houses. I mean, leak is a small word to describe what's going on there. Right. And they end up with respiratory issues, and then it has major and serious health implications. Right. So I am glad to know, and I hope that before this session ends, Mr. Speaker, that the Minister of Works will share with me the information as to how in Angliston we can access it, because I know there are a lot of people who are assessed, and nothing has happened since there was a change of government, Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, the hurricane repairs, I don't know if that's, is that continuing? The hurricane, you can talk?
Specific small home repairs in urban renewal, or is she also speaking about NRRU? Because there are a number of different initiatives, and we certainly would wish to be able to provide the information that she seeks.
Thank you. I'm speaking about, the first one I was speaking about was and I described it just now as the housing program to alleviate substandard housing. It's not anything to do with hurricane. It's a social initiative, which was a commitment of the prior administration to address the issue of substandard living conditions. The second thing I'm talking about is the hurricane repair, and I'm wondering whether, well, I know in Angliston it stopped, okay? And so I don't know what happened. And the problem with that is that you have people in New Providence, because Matthew hit New Providence, and in Angliston it was affected. You have people in Grand Bahama, in Low Sound, and Long Island, and Crooked Island, and elsewhere. Central Andros. And the program has come to a halt. Now the problem with that is that we now have a crisis in the Bahamas of compromised housing, because we had a terrible hurricane. It hit Nassau, but they've stopped assisting people. And then we're still in the hurricane season. I can tell you, sir, no, let me finish. You could, if you don't mind, I just want to finish this point, okay? Let me just finish. The problem with this, Mr. Speaker, is that we are still in the hurricane season. And when Irma came through the other day and threatened the Bahamas, it was like a nightmare for me, because I know the conditions their homes are in from the last hurricane, Mr. Speaker. Sorry? Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, you missed the point. You missed the point. Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, the member for Angliston is on her feet.
Thank you, Speaker. You see, Mr. Speaker, we had a program in Train. It was stopped. The hurricane repairs do not go back 5 years. They go back in Nassau to Hurricane Matthew. What world are y'all living in? What world are y'all living in, Speaker? What world are these people living in, Speaker?
Honourable member.
Go ahead.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Seabreeze.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I think it's important for us, Mr. Speaker, not to be misleading to this House or to the Bahamian people. The good member for Angliston had indicated that assistance programs and a general statement were stopped. I believe that that statement is incorrect and inconsistent with what has been going on in the country, and it is not fair to the Bahamian people that she would indicate as such without supporting information. As I am aware, we are reviewing programs within urban renewal, and there is a distinct difference between urban renewal, Ministry of Works, and Ministry of Housing, which is dealing with housing matters. And it's very important not to conflict all of this information so as to perhaps confuse the Bahamian people and bring before this honorable House misleading information to gain points.
I totally reject, Mr. Speaker, any assertion that I am misleading this House. If the member says that we are, as we speak, see, I speak in, people know, you know. Mouth could say anything, but people know. If the member is saying that we have not stopped, I heard now review. So I think we now stop and review. Stop and review. And then I hope we ain't gonna hear cancel. I think the member might be indicating they ain't gonna cancel. I don't know. But I know if the member is saying that we have programs going on as we speak, I know for a fact that houses were assessed, scopes of work were done months ago, and nothing has happened. So if the member, if that is misleading, then the Bahamian people are being misled by the actions or non-actions. So I'm not yielding. I'm not yielding. I'm not yielding. Sorry, I don't do it too. No. No, Speaker.
Are you standing on a point of order, honorable member?
Could you have the rule, please, Mr.
Yes,
Speaker?
yes, Mr. Speaker.
I'm always asked what the rule
The member
is.
is misleading the House.
Yeah.
The reality is that the previous
What's the
government...
point of order, Mr. Speaker?
Misleading.
Where?
Misleading.
Show it to me. There it is.
You want me to find the ruling?
Yes, honorable
I
member.
think we're all familiar with it. I'll have to find it, Mr. Speaker. I'll come back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, this is, so let me go back in case I describe it as an assault on the Bahamian people. The small house repair program we had in Train has halted. The hurricane repair, and during Irma, I feared for people in New Providence in particular because they were at risk, and there's no evidence of anything happening there at all, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about this assault. That's only one aspect of the assault. That's only one aspect. The other aspect is the hundreds of people, it appears, I'm thinking it's hundreds, who've been sent home from places of employment. Some in public displays of humiliation, Speaker. I don't like that. Speaker, you could send somebody home, but it's how you do it. And then you make public spectacles of them, Mr. Speaker. And we know some are very respected Bahamians. You know what I'm talking about? Respected Bahamians, man. And then you treat them like they ain't nothing, Speaker. I call that an assault on the Bahamian people, Mr. Speaker. Young people working right now without pay. They might have been paid by now. No. They ain't paid? No, well, I don't know. Ain't paying? No. Working without pay. And living in fearful uncertainty about their fate.
The chair recognizes the honorable member.
Mi- mi- 30. 30. Rule 33, Mr. Speaker. Let me find. You have the speaker. No. Mr. I'll get my bearings.
And let me just help the member in case I'm not correct about that at this time. I know I have constituents who are minimum wage people, who were not paid, and who were in a crisis because they live from paycheck to paycheck. Now, if they're paid now, then then the issue doesn't prevail. But I can tell you, there was if it ain't now, it was very recently, people were working for weeks without pay. And Mr. Speaker, What bothers me, Mr. Speaker, is the empty political rhetoric to justify this cruel policy, which is being directed not at powerful, rich people, directed at minimum wage people in this country, man. The smallest, most vulnerable people in our country are being subject to the ravages of this kind of policy, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, we have questions on the agenda right now as to their fate. What's going to happen with these people? You saw that meeting at education, that chaotic meeting, and the distress of the faces of those women who are mothers, who don't know where to next, fearful that they I don't know what is the point of this sort of indecision, this sort of, Speaker, what is the point of this, Speaker? Speaker? So, Speaker?
Honorable members, on a point of order, Chair,
27,
Section 27, Rule 27?
Rule 27, 33, subsection 27, F. Mr. Speaker, I hear the member. Yes.
Yes,
Mr.
carry
Speaker.
on. Yes.
No, I could raise it now, Mr. Speaker, because
Carry on, member.
Mr. Speaker, I'll allow the member to finish, then make my point.
Thank you.
Speaker, you have an upsurge in violence in this country. Now, we know that political parties have played footsie with this issue. We know that, both sides, including this party, the governing party, up to in the last election. So we know that, right? And I hope at some point we're going to learn that it's time to stop that. But, it seems to keep rearing its ugly head because we were chastised in 2012 and 2017 we saw the now governing party doing the same thing. But we've seen an upsurge in violence. But what is disturbing about this violence, Mr. Speaker, it's like a new form of violence because I don't remember, and I could be wrong, but I don't remember this kind of succession of killing of children or young people, teenagers. And we even had a baby the other day. I saw the obituary the other day of a baby that was killed. The last one, which was one I think that cut the hearts of all of us, was the primary school boy who they said was in his home doing his homework, and who met his death in his house, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I listened to the national address of the Prime Minister in 2017, and even then, you saw an attempt to politicize this issue where he spoke about the crime problem we face today was set in motion by the sins of the past, leaders who's, the timing of it is political. He's talking about a certain group of people at that time, Mr. Speaker. I think we got to move from that because this type of violence we're seeing is different. And if you want to keep going back to 1970s, Mr. Speaker, we can do that. We can do that, Mr. Speaker. But I can tell you, if we don't appreciate that we are dealing with a serious crisis in this country, and that we have to go to the table and give new analysis to it, Mr. Speaker, but if we don't think that, then our people will continue to suffer, Mr. Speaker. And I read the communication of the Minister of National Security, and I know he's facing a difficult issue, and that he's not personally responsible, because I think he sounded defensive in that, as if he felt there was some personal attachment. But, that we have an obligation of governance to get on top of this issue, Mr. Speaker. And I looked at here the wide-ranging issues, even reversion to some old strategies, Speaker, which didn't work before. And so I want to invite him again, because I know he's trying to do everything, because that was everything he put in there, But I want to invite him to urge him, and I've issued 2 statements as the shadow minister, to include us in the official opposition in this process, because you have to have a non-partisan approach. You can be a government with civil society and all those things, which is good, and I agree and I support it. But you need to bring in everybody. Let's get to the table. And one of the things that I feel strongly about is juvenile justice, because I've seen children get in trouble for a small thing. I've seen it so many times that it's almost like, well, how come we ain't pick up on this? You know, it's a knife in school, then it's a stabbing, then it's a gun, and then the next thing you know, it's murder. And you see it happening with children who are perpetual offenders. And they come through the system, and it's almost like you're just watching it happen and dealing with it on an ad hoc basis as you see it. And so, I think we got to look at the issue of how we deal with children that are troubled, who are coming through the system, Mr. Speaker, because I have seen the greatest of heartbreaks in my own experience, Speaker. And of course, I had asked before, and I asked again about the Commissioner of Police, as to what is his status? Because you don't know whether that's creating some level of instability in what we're trying to achieve. We've had no definitive explanation as to what is happening, and I think that we ought to be clear on that, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, we hear about national health insurance. They say they support it, but then you hear everything which tells you they don't really support it, Mr. Speaker. So we don't even know where we are with national health insurance, Mr. Speaker. It's like speaking with forked tongue on this issue, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, we look at the promises of Grand Bahama in the speech from the throne. Development of Freeport as an offshore technology hub. Sorry. Well, you say mortgage relief, but I can tell you the IMF report spoke about the effect of mortgage relief on the economy. I will pull it for you and share it with you. I will share it with you. They referred specifically to the impact of that.
How many people?
Speaker, my government will promote, this is from the speech from the throne, Grand Bahama as a primary location for international, local and film, incentives for financial services, and on, Speaker. But we look at the national address of the 26th of July of the Prime Minister, and what he says was, and I'm going to quote this, the government is now involved in negotiations with the owners of the assets of the Grand Lucayan and Grand Bahama and related assets for the joint ownership, that's with the government now, of those assets in partnership with a number of investors. We have identified a number of integrated travel and hospitality companies and then he goes on to say, as was done in the United States during the 2008 Great Recession, my government's intent is to resuscitate and grow business to Grand Lucayan as rapidly and as sustainably as possible, and thereafter sell its equity in one of the existing partners to other investors. This is what was said in this national address. We have no intention of remaining as an owner. So the commitment is to acquire jointly, but not to stay in the business of hotel business for an extended period. All signs point, this is what the Prime Minister said in July, all signs point to the beginning of renovations at the resort within the next month, with the facility ready for business for the winter season. So what I'm asking now, we know that didn't happen. So what we want to know is, where are we with this latest promise, Mr. Speaker? And we heard the member for Pine Ridge opine about his constituency and the issues that are faced. This is this is a reality. You could come in here, and this is exotic air. But out there's some realities, and people want answers to quality of life issues. And Grand Bahama is burdened heavily under the strains of that economy. What happened to the MSC deal for Ocean Key? It was a cruise facility and maritime training. We had that far advanced, I believe, and I just like it just poof, disappeared. What about, and then the sale of Lucayo, what I mentioned, that we don't know what's happening with that. Then the MOU with Carnival, where is that? The MOU was signed with Carnival, and for the establishment of a cruise facility in Grand Bahama. Where are we with that? And then the celebration, we're now hearing that's ended services, they say temporarily. That's another big blow to the economy of Grand Bahama. And then we're hearing, I don't know, of layoffs and closures in other facilities in Grand Bahama. Grand Bahama requires serious attention right now. So they're asking in Grand Bahama, and I spoke to a few, because you know I'm moving around on unrelated matters. And what they want to know, they told me to come in here and ask. They told me to come in here and ask, is this the people's time? That's what you meant? Just what you meant? Speaker, I just want to say, Mr. Speaker, let's forget the backtracking. Let's forget the abandoned promises in the wasteland. Where is the plan? Let's say all that finished, because that ain't gonna happen, right? But what I want to know is, where is a plan? Not the plan, a plan for the Bahamian people. We see lots of touring, plenty talking. But what is supposed to be happening for the Bahamian people? When is something going to happen there? Can I just advise, because we've been there, done that, this kind of politicking has a short expiry date. Bahamians don't have patience for it. They're looking for results, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, if this is the people's time, Mr. Speaker, the only thing I have to say is, Lord, help us. If this is, these contradictions, these inconsistencies, the touring, the promises that are nowhere near being delivered, if this is what our expectation is, then Lord help us, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I think there were some references in there to the social media, and I just want to mention, because it's something that I feel strongly about, and I believe other people in here would feel the same way. The speech spoke about financial, cyber, and commercial use and misuse of the internet. And I know that during the campaign, there were personalities that associated with political organizations. I'll say it generally, I'll say it in a nondescript way like that, but I really got a more specific view about where these personalities came from. And they made the most egregious and outrageous assertions. And we have to find a way to not stop freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is good, but to stop almost terroristic-like use of the tongue to assault the reputations of people with no basis whatsoever. And so, I don't know what's anticipated. Maybe when someone speaks, they'll tell us about that. But I want to urge, we could even begin to review that issue, how we can curb misuse in that way, Mr. Speaker. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that my prayers are going out to the people of Ragged Island and Acklands. And let me just say, in Ragged Island, Mr. Speaker, they are the most resilient, incredible people. I went to Ragged Island with the Prime Minister and the delegation, and I could tell you, they were and the devastation was very, very widespread. And I was just utterly amazed and dumbfounded at the resilience of the people of Ragged Island. I came out of there not sure whether I want to feel proud or deeply saddened by what I saw. But they are an incredible people. So too are the people of Acklands, and in particular, Salina Point. And then, Mr. Speaker, we cannot forget the people of the Turks and Caicos Islands. Yes. We cannot forget them. They almost 80%, and they are brothers and sisters. They us. Yeah. You go to Grand Bahama right now, they are us. And we gotta speak about our people in Turks and Caicos Islands. The people of Barbuda. We heard about the people of Dominica. People in the British Virgin Islands who were wiped out. Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands, Mr. Speaker. What we're seeing, and we've heard it discussed from the member from North Abaco, the issue of climate change in this region, and it's having a widespread impact. And I want to commend Archbishop Leish Boyd, because he traveled throughout the Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos Islands to view firsthand this domestic issue, and he is currently engaged in raising relief for our brothers and sisters in the Bahamas and in the Turks and Caicos Islands. But, Mr. Speaker, my point is this, that we're seeing, because the Dominica thing comes up, our hearts go out to the people of Dominica. I mean, no question about it. I mean, it's not even debatable. But when we look at the widespread nature of the wrath of nature in this region, even in this last instance or two, in the last couple of weeks, it tells us we have to have a comprehensive and rational approach. And I want to recommend to the Prime Minister that he called a CARICOM meeting in the Bahamas to review this issue and to see how we can have a heightened awareness of it, that we can be proactive, and that we can have policies, but so that we are able to understand what we are dealing with, because they're all our brothers and sisters. And so we need to have sight of the bigger picture, bring all of our countries together, the leaders in our countries, and see how we can help our people in this region. Yes, we came on the same boat and we got dropped off. I agree. But we want to make sure that we are addressing the issue in a way that we would wish to, Mr. Speaker. And so I want to recommend, because I'm told that happened before, after 9/11 in the Bahamas, we could take leadership on it. But we want to make sure that, and then we have to bring our people along because they have to be informed. Bahamian people are very caring people. Very caring. I don't care what anyone says. They're caring people and they're good people. But they need to be informed. They have to have an understanding of what it is you are proposing. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever, Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to end again by thanking the Governor General. It was a speech well read, great eloquence and poise. But I would say this, it's the aftermath of that speech, where the words collide with actions, or the lack thereof. This is where we as a people begin to have grave concern. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member, just a moment. I am so pleased that we have arrived at a point where we are seriously looking at the rules of procedure within this chamber. And so before we proceed, I just want to make a few points and then allow members who may want to air their views the opportunity to speak. Reference was made to Rule 23 with respect to statements made by members in this chamber regarding the character of a member who, or former member, or private citizens who are not a part of this chamber. So let me just read 23 for you. Rule 33:20, subsection 23 says, reference shall not be made in debate to the character or conduct of any person except in his official or public capacity. That is in reference to members. But beyond that, if we read subsection 24, which makes it very clear, any member who desires to refer in debate in the House to or any committee to the character or conduct of any person in his official or public capacity shall deliver to the Speaker a written prior notice of the proposed reference. The notice shall set out the facts on which such reference will be based and shall be signed by the member giving it. The Speaker may, in his discretion, permit the reference. Now, in the matter before the House yesterday, the member did in fact give the Speaker notice of his written communication and provided the Speaker with a copy. But I'm further guided by Erskine May on the matter of freedom of speech, which is one of the most fundamental privileges of Parliament. If we look at page 83, it says this: subject to the rules of order in debate, a member may state whatever he thinks fit in debate, however offensive it may be to the feelings or injurious to the character of individuals, and he is protected by his privilege from any action for libel as well as from any other question or molestation. So, the point being made is that one of the most fundamental tenets of debate and privilege is freedom of speech. And that should not be whittled down by any attempt, even by the courts. As a matter of fact, in another publication out of the United Kingdom, it says any attempt by the courts to contravene parliamentary privilege would be unconstitutional. No court order could restrict or prohibit parliamentary debate or proceedings. I just wanted to bring that to the attention of members of parliament with respect to the double-edged sword that we may be examining when we talk about parliamentary privilege. Honorable member, I'm not finished. I'm not, further, I want to say that the rules as they are expressed, and any rules, as a matter of fact, cannot cover every conceivable situation. And so, the presiding officer has the discretion. But the point I want to make is that on a point of order, under Rule 38, it is very, very clear how we should proceed. A member who rises on a point of order shall, when invited by the Speaker, in other words, you don't start speaking before you are invited to by the Speaker or the Chairman. And you would state the infringement of these rules on which his point of order is based, and then resume his seat. Now, I think that's very clear. So you state the point, and you resume your seat. The Speaker, now, the infringement of the rules. Now, when subsection 2, when a point of order has been raised, any member who is then speaking shall resume his seat. And after the point of order has been stated, the Speaker or the Chairman shall rule on as soon as may be. Now, in other words, it is not open for any member to suggest to another member, particularly if the member is addressing the chair, that that member doesn't have a point of order or that member should take his seat. That is an exclusive domain of the presiding officer at the discretion of the presiding officer. It is a new day, and I intend to narrowly interpret these rules. Across the board. Across the board. So, I don't want to kill the excitement of the debate. But I would like for us to be conscious of these rules and to follow the rules. And so, as we proceed, if you state an infringement of the rules that perhaps may not be expressed, then it is up to the Speaker as to whether or not the Speaker is satisfied that a point of order is being made, or there is, in fact, an infringement of the spirit of these rules. Yes, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rum Kingston, Salvador.
Mr. Speaker,
Oh, I'm sorry. Honorable member had risen to her feet prior to.
No, Mr. Speaker said I would speak before, yes.
Yes, I recognize the member for Seabreeze and then the member for Cat Island.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I thought it not, even though I do have, according to the rules, a point of order, I allowed the good member to continue with her deliberations. But, Mr. Speaker, the point I stand on with respect to that presentation is Rule 33, Mr. Speaker, subsection 27F. It indicates a member may, in the following circumstances, only interrupt another member who is speaking. And I go to F, Mr. Speaker, to offer an explanation of some material part of his speech which has been misunderstood. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, but and it's up to the Speaker to determine. The part I'm dealing with, Mr. Speaker, is explanation, Mr. Speaker. The part where I indicated in response to what she said, that, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the part where I indicated that the good member was misinforming and misleading the public to indicate that certain things were not being done in the Ministry of Social Services and Urban Development, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm under your care, but Mr. Speaker, I think it's very important that we give the Bahamian people the truth, and certain information was put forward here during the good member's presentation that must be clarified. I'm in your hands, Mr. Speaker.
What the point being raised, the chair will take the view with respect to certain issues being raised by both sides. If an issue is raised as to the credibility or the facts or the correct facts, the chair would normally take the position and rule on the side of exposure and disclosure. And so that if an area is being questioned, then the position of the chair would be to request that member to provide the facts. So it wouldn't have to be the rules, you would just yes, if the point, no, not forget the rules. See, honorable member, no, the discretion of the chair will permit it. The discretion of the chair, when it is not found in the rules, it is at the discretion of the chair. And that is applicable to both sides.
With you on the issue, Mr. Speaker, if I may, what I wanted to raise, the point where the member indicated that assistance has stopped for older persons. That is what was said, Mr. Speaker. It was also said that some urban renewal programs had ceased, Mr. Speaker, without any factual information. We can't come here as responsible members with hearsay and what is being heard on the blocks. Mr. Speaker, we must have substantive information, so I want to indicate too, Mr. Speaker, this honorable House, and for the purpose of the Bahamian people, that urban renewal is continuing its work by and on behalf of the Bahamian people. Many of its programs have been continued. Some are being reviewed, Mr. Speaker, because indeed in this era and under this government of financial prudence, accountability, and transparency, Mr. Speaker, we will not continue programs where we have found some incidences of mismanagement and dishonorable practices. And so, Mr. Speaker, I'm just saying it is unfair, and to my mind, It is misleading to indicate because we are not continuing on the same line of a former government to say that we are not continuing the work of the Bahamian people. We are just doing it the right way. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Angleston.
Speaker, the member can be assured, I'm a senior member of this House now, I've been here long. I don't get my information from the blocks. I represent a people. So the member I would kindly be respectful and give some regard to when I speak, that there has some value as to who I speak of. Now, the members indicated, the member just gave a very long speech, and she's going to speak again, Mr. Speaker. When that member speaks, because I know that there's something to do with 5 houses with minor roof repair. Okay, I ain't talking about that. I'm talking about a program that was addressing substandard housing in this country. Now, if the member is saying that it exists and it's happening in Engliston, maybe when we adjourn, Mr. Speaker, when we break, she'll tell me who and where, because I'm not aware. And there's been no information coming to me. I've had communications with that agency for a limited project of a much more superficial approach. And if that is being referred to, that is not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to a small house repair initiative to address the condition of housing. So the member cannot come in, Mr. Speaker, and accuse me of misleading this House. What the member should do is establish in this House what is in fact happening. That would kill everything. Just let us know what you're doing.
Honourable
Thank you,
members,
Mr. Speaker.
when the honourable member for Seabreeze presents, perhaps she can address those issues. The chair recognizes the honourable member for Cat Island, Rum Kingston, Salvador.
Mr. Speaker, I stand as a long-standing member in this House.
The longest standing.
Long-standing member in this House.
The longest.
I guess the father of the House right now.
He's the father.
Right? And in respect to your... I know Papa. I know Papa. Papa has long gone. Papa has long been gone. Papa's long been gone. Speaker, I appreciate the ancient privileges of this House and the right to be able to speak. And you quite rightly drew attention to sources that buttress that view. But unfortunately, there is a ruling in this jurisdiction that I don't know that, having heard you, that you took into account in respect to that. And unfortunately, as I said before, it did not go further than first instance. And so I think you may want to, in your deliberations, consider how that ruling now impacts upon what you just said to this House. Because there is a ruling. That's the first point I make. Second point I make is that very often points of order would be made to you. And in the exercise of a discretion, you have to allow yourself to hear both sides of the issue. It's not that you will hear the point of order and then not hear a counter argument to that point of order if one exists. Because very often we have a tendency of just listening to the point of order and then making a ruling without hearing from the other side. And so that's all I ask. In the exercise of discretion, you have to hear both sides. You have to hear both sides on that particular issue and then you could decide on whichever way you will go.
Honourable member, I understand the point you're making,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, the rules are not designed to function the same way a court hearing occurs. Because what the rules clearly state that when you make your point of order, the chair will then determine whether, in fact, you have legs to stand on your point of order.
As a speaker, you are the arbiter. Right? And as an arbiter, that's something, you're an arbiter. An arbiter ought not to exercise, ought not to determine any issue in the exercise of a discretion without hearing both sides. That's what I'm saying to you. That's what I say to you. if your ruling is not, then fine. But I'm just saying that is the position. Also, Mr. Speaker, we ought to caution members of this House. We ought to be able to caution us,
Yes.
members of this House, in the exercise of our what you call freedom of speech, and particularly from the source from which you read, because we in here, we have a remedy if anyone in here either malign, defame, or otherwise impugn our character in this place, because we could then invoke our privilege, have the privilege committee deal with it, and then the House can deal with a member.
Yes.
But persons outside of these premises who are not here, they don't have that privilege, right? And I point out, Mr. Speaker, when you look at Rule 23, you indicated that notice was given to you of the privilege issue yesterday. That notice only applied to persons in this House, or someone in their official or public capacity. For example, not private citizens.
Not private citizens.
Not private citizens. And I just think you ought to caution us about that.
Well, I think, I take the point which you're making, but I think the statement that I read on page 83 of Erskine May protects the privilege of members, basically to say almost anything about a private citizen, and no action can be brought against the member if he exercises that privilege. Now, I would also go a step further and say that if in the discretion of the Speaker is of the view that an honorable member has crossed over or is trying to table some documents that is not permissible, the Speaker will make a decision on that effort by the member, and if the Speaker permits it, the difficulty I see with what exists today, if the Speaker permits it, no court can overreach into the proceedings of Parliament if the Speaker permits it.
Well, the Speaker permitted those.
We just had that issue, you know. You're withdrawing the action.
Yeah. That's
The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Garden Hills.
Mr. Speaker, thank you so much, sir. I was seeking earlier from the Member of Parliament for Angliston to give me some clarity about the dismissal or determination of scores of workers. I just wanted the member to confirm whether she was speaking specifically about those individuals who were given contracts for April, May, and June, whose contracts have now expired, or whether she was speaking about the 1,700 workers who were told to go to work in the public service, who did not get a letter, got absolutely nothing. No provisions were made, and they were sent to various ministries. Yeah, I'm asking you the question. I just want you to tell me specifically which groups or group of individuals you are speaking about who have been sent home by the public service. And specifically, I want to find out whether you're talking about Group 1, those 3-month contractors. Group 2, the 1,700 plus workers who were sent to work, just said go to work. No, you are. I want to know I want to know who you are talking about. I want to know which group you are talking about. If you tell me which groups in the public service I'm sending home now, I just like to know which group. I'm just picking on groups. or the individuals who are retired, who are receiving pensions, or any particular group. I don't suspect that you'd come to Parliament and say the Ministry of Public Service is sending home, for example, the persons you hired for 3 months on contracts and the contracts are expired. I don't suspect you'd be talking about the 70 and 100 persons that you just sent to work without anything. I'm not answering it.
Honorable member.
I'm not answering it. I will give an opportunity to tell me so that I could respond.
Yes. Honorable members, do you wish to respond?
I will respond in this way. I will respond this way, Mr. Speaker. Whatever groupings, I'm assuming you are affirming you've sent people home in those categories, or you're not confirming. Okay, Speaker. Speaker, I am speaking to all persons who were in the service, including those in the Ministry of Education, who were called into a meeting a couple of days ago, which was captured on our cameras, on the media's cameras, who are now facing the prospect of not having employment. I'm speaking about people who were in the employ of the government, who have been, I'm speaking of people who were in the employ of the government, who have been sent home, some of whom are distinguished Bahamians, Mr. Speaker, who were treated disgracefully, I believe, because of their political colors. This government is, the people in the Ministry of Tourism, and on and on and on, Mr. Speaker. This government has distinguished itself for victimizing people because of their political affiliation, Mr. Speaker.
I will seek to address all of our questions this afternoon.
Thank you, honorable member. Thank you. As many? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Garden Hills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, I now move that the House do suspend until 3 p.m.
Is there a seconder? It has been moved and seconded that the business of the House suspend until 3 p.m. All those who are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will rise. The business of the House stands suspended until 3 p.m. today.